Blessed love and peace. Congratulations. Here we are again. Alhamdulillah, Baruch Hashem. Hallelujah. Jayam. Ado. Aho. Shanti. Shisha. So, mixed. Uh, Something that is intended to be shared earlier, that escapes my recollection and concentration, is shared now by the grace of the Most High. About the mixed experience. Again, it's very difficult to articulate, to convey the severity of suppression, the severity of repression, the severity, the pervasiveness. It's beyond normalcy. It's primordial. It's a primordial. Snuffing is not the thing. Suffocation is not the thing. It's a primordial, like smothering. That's one way to describe it. Like covering, like just rejecting, denying, suppressing from existing the experience of being mixed across the board. It's not even a volitional thing. It's a natural, primordial, involuntary phenomena along all the races, ethnicities, tribalisms. So that when it becomes even like a somewhat acknowledged, a semblance of acknowledgement, is just like, okay, just get along, just here you go, here's some compensation, here's some rewards. We could just be quiet though. That's for thousands of years. Now, mixed heritage exists thoroughly for thousands of years in many different ways. It's extremely influential for thousands of years. But as a norm, it's somewhat unprecedented in a global sense, and particularly amidst the experience of imperialism. Basically, two paths, three paths in the humanoid sentience of this world. One is the wilderness, and it's the law of the jungle. There are no rules. That's what it is. Then the other one is civilization, and civilization equates to imperialism, conquering, subjugation, enslavement, nasty business, but it's somewhat further civilized than the jungle experienced. The third path is like the transcendent path that becomes vulnerable to each of those, but at the same time ascends both of those, and has a way of navigating and persevering without any guarantees or whatever else. But that's the third path. So in this middle path or the second path of civilization, which is that's what people will talk about when we're talking about the world system and everything else like that. It's imperialism across the board, beyond colors or other whatever else. The nature of it's how it's manifested is distinct from region to region and peoples to peoples, but it's the same thing. So, in terms of the experience of mixed heritage vis-a-vis imperialism, we're into unprecedented, uncharted waters. Imperialism itself evolves for thousands of years. Imperialism takes from different cultures, mathematics, laws, techniques of subordination and otherwise. So it in and of itself is mixed heritage, because that's what it is. But at the same time, it's equal opportunity oppressiveness, oppressor, downpressor, bullshitor. So in terms of like having a commitment, sense of responsibility, of continuation of ancestry, and additionally in reconciling with those weights and obligations in this life, teaching that, that's not what oppression, that's not what imperialism does. Imperialism has a facade of that, but that's getting into complicated. The point for all this is this. What we observe just within the past 20 years is increasing numbers of mixed heritage people across the world, and with that, increasing self-awareness, self-awakening, and less acceptance of subordination, undue subordination or silencing, and that burgeoning, that manifesting itself in terms of undeniability. One particular example of this manifestation in a conventional sense is the US Census of 20 years ago, 20, quarter of a century at this point. So it was a campaign, it was a low key campaign. It wasn't very, I didn't hear about it, to be honest. I didn't hear about it when it was happening in the 90s. Didn't hear about it. And it was my life, but I didn't hear about it. Don't care too much about the census anyways at that time, but still didn't hear about it in the news or anything else like that. Didn't hear about it in the grassroots. Didn't hear about it in the hallways or in the streets or anything else. I didn't hear about it. When I started learning about the mixed heritage movement just 1 or 2 years later, 1 year actually later, actually 2 years later, in 2002, and I started learning about the mixed heritage movement, then I started learning about like one of the big issues in the mixed heritage movement being the advocacy for ticking further than one box. For me, up to that point, it hadn't even been an issue because I was passing for black, passing for light skin. So, by the way, also, just FYI, privilege is delusion. Um, just for your information. That's a whole other thing, though. White people are anybody who claims white privilege or whatever else, if they're mixed heritage claiming white privilege, just understand privilege is synonymous with delusion. Because one is very much enveloped in the enslavement and the oppression of otherwise. Again, this is a little bit of an extended side note, but here's some evidence to that effect. When people are talking about white privilege, when white Americans, lily white brethren, holy brethren and sister, are talking about having white privilege, again, it's evidence of being pimped. It's evidence of delusion. And here's some evidence to that effect that substantiates that claim of that synonymity between privilege and delusion. You think you're privileged, you think God got it better, right? Okay, how about this? Check out how much your girls are being trafficked, are being molested, are being sold out by family members and authority figures for sexual exploitation. Privilege. Check out how much your boys are being done like that, done dirty. Privilege. Check out how pervasive mental disease is amongst white privilege. The pervasivity of prescription drugs and medication just to be able to sleep. Privilege. Check out the rates of stress and illnesses born from stress, and further, check out the some of the leading causes of diseases, or some of the leading causes of death: suicide, self-afflicted death. Privilege. Check out the rates of obesity. Privilege. Check out the rates of labor, hours worked, years lived without being married, without children, without a support structure of family and friends. Privilege. Those things that escape the standard demographics of economics in terms of salary and income and otherwise, that people base that notion of having privilege. It's delusion. You're being pimped and enslaved and killed, just in a different way. That's all. It's torture and it's murder in a different way. That's all it is. Privilege. So it's beneficial to wake up from that too. White folk and passing folk and all folk. Privilege. It's delusion. It's pimp talk. For your information, back to the regularly scheduled program. Mixed people. It's interesting to observe the traffic patterns whilst I'm reciting this joint. So it's nothing new though. We have yet to have any pedestrians stop and kind of just stand in front of the window, at least at the moment. It's an hour before midnight, after Shabbat. Looking all ragamuffin still. Has this been laundered since then? Depends how you identify, if we're going to use those politics, or define laundered. Either way, it's here. It's covering up something. Anyways, that's enough of that. Late night focus. Mixed people. What we observe is, at that census situation, 20,000 in the Gregorian calendar, 20 some odd years ago, is that eventual kind of relinquishment or that acquiescence on the part of convention, imperialism itself, to give some appeasement to mixed heritage kinfolk, particularly increasing demographics that are undeniable even within convention. Even at that time, makes people constituting further than the majority of the population, but that's still not yet being recognized. But officially, increasing numbers, enough of noise and dust being kicked up. Say, okay, here we go. It's too undeniable. We're gonna have to like make some concessions. All these boxes and plantation box politics. Okay, we're gonna do something about that. Here you go. Fine. You can do multiple boxes. That messes up like affirmative action. It messes up all the divide and conquer techniques and everything for the past few decades and generations, and that becomes further evident as the years progress. So point here is that in that little small little thing that even to our estimation is not the most priority, and it's not the biggest thing, whatever, what we do observe at this moment is the irreversible, that's a little bit of a strong claim right there, but the very strong um, uh, and and potent effect that it has in the psyche, the of the cipher, of the mixed heritage cipher worldwide, of validation, of a recognition, and with that recognition a platform to like start standing up further and be like, wait, hold up, okay. And it's not even necessarily a cognizant kind of thing. It's not even like a self um aware type of thing, but it's a natural thing of just like, oh, we're starting to wake up and be like, okay, yeah, like this egg is around us and like subduing us. We got to get out this egg and like break this shell. And okay, we see little corner here, we see some daylight. Yo, keep at it, break it further. All these contrived methodologies of division based on selfishness, break it further. So because this is the nature of life. um and that's what we're observing in the years since then. Because yes, there have been the waves of repetition, but it's like continual and continual waves, just as like the efforts of a few individuals, leadership, and additionally get subdued or distracted or whatever. After a few years, another wave arrives, another wave, and these are intelligent people, and further, and it becomes further to kind of keep it at bay. And so there becomes what we observe, as we said before, there is the tendency of like establishing these alternative methodologies and kind of guiding these voices and guiding the those who are standing up in a specific direction of futility. Again, having that ceiling. But even then, we observe a recognition, if we can understand that. Like we observe recognition within convention of like, yeah, this is going to be a beyond our control kind of situation. And so, like, making steps of trying to like get aside in the mix, so to speak. Let's get away from those ignorant entendres. But like getting a coalition or getting like some kinfolk on one side, and just prepare for like the uncharted mix of global. I say again, that uncharted realm and waters of global politics, globalization, whatever, the world system, where it is beyond any one ethnic or religious faction's predominance. And again, at this moment, imperialism is not a European phenomenon. It's not rooted within Europe. It is rooted, to be honest, within the Most High. Everything is rooted within the Most High. Temporally speaking, it's rooted predominantly from the middle grounds, from Mediterranean to China. Understanding that this is where the religiosities, this is where the systems emerge, this is where the methodologies of manipulation and otherwise emerge, with a knowledge of the different types of cultures. And additionally, it's a further temperate thing. Whereas in polarities, or it's not quite the quasi polarities in the polar extremes, the North Polar, literally like Scandinavia, Northern Europe, and additionally the northern culture, as opposed to, or as in complement to the equator culture, which is called the South, which is actually the middle, which is also a psychological tool. Um, but in those two extremes of habitat, um, it is increasingly a primordial experience. It's increasingly primal experience. People call it hedonistic or pagan or otherwise. Um, but that's where like the natural man is strongest, physiologically. Um, I won't get into genetics or whatever because we don't stay away from a lot of the science kinfolk at this point. Because again, understanding where genetics research comes from, and additionally, significantly for the past couple centuries, it's a nasty thing. So don't. Anyway, all right. But just recognizing like in the middle grounds that I mentioned, Mediterranean to China, there is a knowledge about moderation, management, administration, systems, mathematics, those type of things. In the further climate extremes of the human experience, which is the equator and then the polarities, particularly the northern polarity, there is less of an emphasis and experience of those middle middle ground cultures of mathematics and meditation. Not to say it's not available, it's not accessible, it's not known. There's less of a entrenchment or investment, an acculturation, or however you want to describe that, concerning these experiences of systems and otherwise. And there is an increased formidability in terms of physiology, resistance towards disease, healing from disease, um, and cultures that have emphasized relationship with nature. That's particularly in the Eastern Hemisphere. In the Western Hemisphere of Turtle Island, indigenous nations on this Western Hemisphere, there's less of a very stark binary between the equator and the polarities. There's an increased amount of migration. There's an increased amount of cohesion amidst the cultures. There's enough greed, hatred, and delusion of itself, imperialism of its own self in different ways. But it's less of a stark contrast, particularly phenotypically, um, at least as can be observed by the Eastern eye. So, emphasis again is in the medicine, and less on the mathematics. So, that's still a side note. A side note. Back to mixed heritage. So, point is that in this experience of the world system, mixed people in the United States, particularly with the establishment of the U.S. Census situation 20 years ago, 20 years ago, provides an affirmation. It provides substance for increased substance for mixed heritage people to like stand firmer, and start voicing firmer. And so that's what we're observing, because now, to be honest, amidst these repeated waves over the past 20 years, after every 3 or 4 years, the rise and falls of mixed heritage organizations, by and large, not categorically, but by and large, what we're observing in the most recent wave, amidst a lot of the repetition, we are observing an evolved component where there's in further individual organization, meaning that immediately translates to ongoing, or at least the intentionality of ongoing economic sustainability, meaning that rather than just focusing on festivals, and like one-off conferences or whatever else like that, or intended annual conferences, now it's in terms of publications, and it's in terms of podcasts, and other forms of consultation, and additionally, and it's being done by individuals, it's being done by small groups, collectives of friends and otherwise, in an increasingly grassroots here and there kind of way, with by individuals who have credentials, who have education, who have training, journalists, artists, musicians, writers, and additionally, who have the capability of doing these things, have a knowledge about how it works, have a network of how to organize and otherwise, and now have backing from conventional entities, major publishing companies or whatever else, that are seeing economic viability, that are recognizing civilizational inevitability in many ways, and so are making concessions. I mean, that's a little bit of a derogatory, pejorative, patronizing kind of way of describing it, but it's concessions in the sense that we still observe strings being attached in terms of how to guide even still the themes and the subjects and the topics of these ventures, podcasts, publications, and additionally, whereby it's getting a little bit further advanced in terms of the questioning and the topics, but still, it's still well, it has some ways to go in our estimation in terms of advancing the genuine needs and addressing the genuine needs of community. Still, I mean, like I said, in the past 20 years, there's been intentional co-option of the mixed heritage movement itself by investing in leadership that and guiding that leadership to guide the conversation into certain ways, aligning it with certain politics, LGBTQ specifically, and that unduly influencing who gets involved in those ventures, who gets supported in those ventures, who gets a voice in those ventures, who has a decision making in those ventures. Oh, am I salty because exclusion? We get beyond this. So, but we observe how the effect of these arrangements and the limited benefit that it provides for the mixed heritage people and also the world community, because the world benefits from mixed heritage people being mixed heritage. It's an intrinsic diplomacy. Beyond the trope of our mixed people here to save the world, everybody is in one way or another. So even when they're trying to destroy it, it's the yin yang of Vishnu Shiva. So, anyways, Bida and then Brahma is there in the mix too. So, saying mix today a lot, huh? Anyway, all right, continuing on with all thanks and praise to the Most High. Continuing on. Oh yeah, we only had like 6 gigs to begin with. Actually, we had 3, but we had to do some of our own administration. So now we got 5. So that plays into this duration joint. 20 minutes. All right. Wow, this is still just the beginning stuff. Wada. All right. Wadi River. Wada, burning spear. Wa, tribe of. What up? What it do? The hood. So, all that being said, just with that census, we're observing with the United States mixed heritage people having further grounding and foundation to be further resilient and gambaru amidst the suppression. That the suppression in many ways is relenting unwillingly. Again, it's a primordial phenomenon. It's beyond any individual's will. It's beyond any group's will. But it is relenting increasingly what we're observing, because there's a certain amount of sentience that recognizes that there's a need again for mixed people to be mixed people. So then for mixed people, it becomes a matter of like, yo, okay, you got a space to talk, you got some ground to talk, you got some recognition to talk. Yo, what you saying? And at that seat at the table, at the world table, it's accountability. Okay, yeah, talk, and it better be beneficial. It better be like substance, because you preventing other things from talking. So, all right, and the consequences of not providing productivity benefits to the whole of the world table in a challenging way. So, let's be careful with this, because first of all, this is a contrived signal anyways. It's generally understood as a sign of peace. So when I do it, it's recognized as that, generally speaking, to my knowledge. That's not what people see. If we start doing this as a signal for adverse consequences, that's clouding the intentionality. So we have to be careful about that. This is benevolent. This is compassionate. This is genuine. So we got to work on maintaining that integrity without beyond the lightheartedness, sarcasm, or otherwise. So that's part of the weight of sovereignty and authority. Can't be joking. Words have weight. Words have consequences. There's truth beyond words. We speak from heart. We speak with light, so that continues to inform and translate what we are communicating beyond our words. But at the same time, we do have to be mindful. We do have to be disciplined and dutiful in sharing our words, so, and our expressions and signals and otherwise. Again, this is one of the reasons why all different types of peoples don't want authority and don't want sovereignty. It's unfun. It's a lot of weight. It's boring. Um, so, all right. Uh, that's actually much of it. There were other things initially, um, but that was the main thing about observing about mixed heritage kinfolk having some substance, um, and I talked before about indigenous people being attached to imperialism and the consequences thereof too. It applies to mixed people too. There's no immunity in that respect. So, and that's the other thing too. This is a helpful binary, it seems, from particularly for mixed people, and particularly for anybody, any POCs getting beyond that delusion too. And this is not a sellout wannabe like criticizing people's own kind. I am uber. I am uber black. I am uber POC. Beyond my credentials, I got credentials upon credentials. So I'm so crazy. I got credentials. I got so credentials. I'm crazy. So whatever. Understand that. So that kind of clap back in terms of, oh, he's just a da 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 da. Get beyond that. Come on. I'm trying to be something serious. Okay. That being said, what was I talking about? I'm awake at least. um, ah, I was talking about all those who want to complain about something about the imperialism. Recognize this, because most of the people, 99.9% of the people who talk about the system, who talk about being woke, who talk about da 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 da, have no intention of leaving imperialism, have no intention of leaving their advantage within imperialism. Because those who do are not on these things. Does that include me? In many ways, yeah, I guess. I'm not proclaiming separation from imperialism. My role, as it is perceived personally, and the role around us generally, is that of mediation, um, and mediation between communities, and mediation from stage to stage, because we're going through stages at this point as a world, as a universe. So those who are like genuinely against the system and imperialism are not using technology. They're in the wilderness. They're in the jungle at this point. We can say Rasta Bushmen, and additionally, they are further towards that respect. Walking with indigenous kinfolk, no contact kinfolk. That's what no imperialism looks like, for the most part, like to the utmost at this moment today. Otherwise, cats is deep in the imperialist game without intentions of leaving it, and thus everything that is said is just pimp talk. I keep saying pimp talk, but that's what it is for the most part until it gets gangsta. But it's pimp talking just in terms of getting a better position, a quote unquote better position, further favorable position within the imperialism. So all the criticisms and everything else like that. Do I say this? The whole one of the vlogs that I watched recently was a mixed sister who has Palestinian ancestry, and proclaim Palestine. So peace and blessings to all kinfolk from Palestine. Peace and blessings to all kinfolk from Israel. Peace and blessings to all kinfolk from the world. Peace and blessings to all kinfolk from the Druze. Peace and blessings to all kinfolk from the Bedouin. Peace and blessings to all kinfolk from, there's a specific group that I'm thinking of that is indigenous to the land, that is excluded from the conversation most commonly. The term escapes me at the moment, so I'm not going to struggle for it at the moment. But peace and blessings to the indigenous people beyond the religiosities. So, but in that situation, I mean, to be honest, on the Israeli side, it's fake bullshit. On the Palestinian Muslim side, it's stupid bullshit, and on the part of the world, it's ignorant bullshit. It's fake bullshit on the part of Israel because Israel is practicing imperialism. It's nasty, and a lot of it is against Torah, um, and it's just status quo for land control today, the weaponry, the tactics, and additionally nasty atrocities. And at the same time, the propaganda machine worldwide is trying to keep a smiley face, peace and gentleness, and the people who are doing a lot of the activism. And additionally, this is through the years. It's nothing new. And the cats who like this has been going for a long time, and like young people like try to like have this air of like inventing struggle and inventing activism because one event happens. I don't even know what happened. I hear about something in October. I don't watch news because it's nothing new. And at the same time, well, I get caught up on this joint, but it's fake on the part of Israel because of those who are promoting Israel, because it's so much of a power imbalance that the propaganda is just like putting this kind, gentle face, and that's what's unnerving. Like it's unnerving when somebody who's like a terrorist or just a nasty motherfucker in public puts on a smiley face, and people like buy into that, and it's extremely frustrating, particularly come from the experience of being black on this land, and America been doing it for hundreds of years, and then much of the world is still buying it, particularly kinfolk on this land, Americans, and particularly people promoting Palestine, buying that. America's such a great country. Shut the fuck up. So and that's what's frustrating. Do I sound bitter? Grapes. Um, so that's why Israel is. It's the fakeness on Israel. It's fake bullshit. The pretense of kindness and everything else like that. And that's what's tenacious because that's what is lost when being the power is that sense of softness and whatever. And that might not seem like a big thing, but when kinfolk are trying to raise children, and additionally, and children can't perceive their parents or whatever else as being kind or whatever else, oh, that's nasty hellishness, serious. So that's one thing. Now on the part of Palestinians, like I said, Palestinians and Muslims are suffering, yes. Kinfolk across the border suffering. That's not to denounce that or to equate that, but here's the thing: the goal in the history within Islam is the same thing that is being done by Israel. It's the same imperialist mindset. So we advocate for the well-being of all kinfolk, but in actuality, it's the ebbs and flows of imperialism, and Palestinians just vying to be imperialistic in the way that Israel is being imperialistic. So it's not something that's better. It's just a different being done by different kinfolk under different pretenses. And that's what's frustrating, because again, looking in the history of the Ummah, and peace and blessings to all kinfolk of the Ummah, Assalamu alaikum, seriously. But we also know the susceptibilities of civilization, that things, the teachings get lost and double talked, and additionally to the point of irrelevance within conventional leadership. And the atrocities additionally get rationalized with very intellectual references to religious teachings and otherwise, but it's still slavery, it's still prostitution, it's still torture and murder and oppression. So whether it's done by Israeli hands, whether it's done by Muslim hands, or otherwise. And one might say there's no Muslim can do that because that's against the definition of Muslim. Guess what? Ditto with Israel. So anyways, that being said, continuing on. Oh, and on part of the world. The world's just ignorant, and jumping on any boat, any one bandwagon or whatever on this side, it's out of pocket. It's an in-house affair. And cats trying to claim one side and be authoritative in claiming that. Young activists stopping me whilst I'm talking on the street, or whilst I'm sitting on the street, trying to tell me what's what. They're not even Muslim. They're not even Arabic or Palestinian, and trying to tell me what's what. Out of pocket. Way out of pocket on this land, in the midst of genocide. 99% of the people are from another land, talking about what should be done elsewhere. Shut the fuck up. All right, am I talking strong at this window at night when nobody's here? We already see that that's other than the case, but anyways, we get a little bit carried away. So Um, Point here is actually going back to the notion of being mixed, and the initial idea consideration before going on that side note is overclass and underclass. That's beneficial binary to recognize, and for mixed people to recognize that much of the solicitations, much of the proclamations in the experience of being mixed, of all the activism and additionally all the conferences and um, festivals, and additionally are with the very established intention of existing and ascending within the overclass. Plain and simple. I think that would be very difficult for people to deny. It's logical. That's what I mean. That's what people do. People in the hood talk about getting out the hood. So, but that's it. And people don't say that. It's somewhat of a given, but at the same time, in recognizing it, it undoes any of the, or it undoes much of the legitimacy, the grounding, the foundation, the semblance of um, credibility as victim, because that's a lot of what it's based upon, either victim or individual rights, and then individual rights that are being suppressed or denied. So, but all of that is existing within a convoluted imperialist construct that actually doesn't care and gives appeasement. So, to select awardees with severe strings attached, including lessening of the spirit. So, um, for mixed heritage kinfolk, it's a matter of recognizing that much of the intention, whether it's individual or collective, is to exist stronger within the overclass, stronger within the overclass, overcast, if you like, and that's not a noble endeavor, um, and there's the tribalisms don't support that, because the tribalisms are doing it themselves. And again, it's not a voluntary thing. It's not a volitional thing. It's a primordial nature existing thing. So, one, recognizing that it's beneficial for mixed heritage kinfolk to be honest about that, um, and there becomes a time like making a decision of what one is going to prioritize, whether it's existence and ascension within the overclass, or if it's being mixed. People of other tribes and ethnicities don't have to make such a distinction, a definitive distinction, because uh, already being a part of an ethnicity is infused with being part of the overclass or overcast, and the histories of competition within maintaining that position. But that's the context of the conflict between ethnic groups, is vying for a greater position within the collective overclass as that particular ethnic group. So there's less of that necessity or calling upon to distinguish between ethnic affiliation and intentionality of being in the overclass. Um, Obviously, there's ethnicities. Each ethnicity has a population that's in the overclass as well as in the underclass, and there's a continuity within that experience with traditional methodologies of distinction and mobilization or migration or mobility and otherwise. Um, Yet, that's actuality for mixed heritage people. The experience for a long time, generally speaking, there are established communities that are distinct away from this particular assertion. However, the general scenario for a long time, and particularly within the world imperialism of the past century or so, is in order to like have a secured position within the overclass, it's involved again passing, it's relinquishing ethnic identity, and that ethnic identity, it's not just ethnic identity, it's ancestral relationship and knowledge, rituals and practice and culture, relinquishing that in order to maintain a position, a somewhat favorable position within the overclass. And the consequences, um, and the challenge is that um, there's no guarantee in like even in retaining one's ethnicity or heritage and ancestral relationship of having a position in the underclass either, because the underclass is also divided by ethnicity and vying for the crumbs and maintaining its relations with the overclass within its own ethnic group and doing what it needs to do, or people doing what they need to do to try to ascend across those lines. Even in the experience of African enslavement on this continent, there's still African nobility. There's still African tribes and chiefs and sovereigns. There's still that continuity, and many people have that mobility. Even after generations and centuries of enslavement here, there's still that mobility to this day. It's actually strengthened in many ways. I think that's recognizable, generally speaking. Um, so, within every ethnic group, there's overclass and underclass, and there's a continuity. In mixed heritage, it's a matter of historically very often there are distinct established communities for multi generations that continue to exist, where it establishes its own conventional um, conventionality, but by and large, mixed people have had to let go of the relationship with ancestry and ethnicity in order to have a viable position within the overclass or even within the underclass, and identifying with a particular struggle and just attaching to that monoethnic struggle and narrative. And without that, um, indeed. So, but point is here for mixed heritage kinfolk to recognize that the advocacy and this notion, this trope of speaking from an experience of victimization is not that supportable of a cause, because it's like, I'm not going to say the privileged word, but it's like um, people of a socioeconomic advantage complaining. I don't want to say complaints. I don't want to reduce it too much because it sounds so derogatory today, or maybe not just today, but just framing it critical. But it's very difficult to have empathy for somebody in a middle class kind of experience, talking about their existential woes and wanting that the bottom line that they're advocating essentially is like being a little bit further comfortable and feeling further substantiated um, in those socioeconomic woes. Meanwhile, people are going to bed hungry. I don't look like one of them people. People are going to bed not knowing if they're going to wake up with violence, bombings, whatever. So it's difficult to have empathy for middle class ennui. And it's beneficial for mixed heritage kinfolk to recognize that and make that decision of whether the priority is the overclass position. And this is not, I'm not trying to like do another contrived binary or ultimatum or whatever else, but just a mindfulness whether the priority is overclass position or whether it's relationship with ancestors, relationship with creator in relations and otherwise, and then making decisions based upon that priority. If the priority is overclass, then the consequences are less of that sense of peace and sense of self and whatever else, and going into the grind and valuing oneself for that involvement in the grind. If it's a decision towards ancestors and relations and creator, then it's a matter of letting go of some of those earthly ambitions of having a big house, a big account, or whatever else, and finding further value within knowledge of self, knowledge of ancestors, knowledge of language, knowledge of heritage and rituals and relationship, and finding genuine happiness and fulfillment and value within this experience. So with that, it's a matter of mixed heritage people making that decision, being comparatively open, honest, candid, and making that decision, and then finding each one each one's proximate cohorts um, who are making similar decisions so that we can organize accordingly. We can be organized as mixed kinfolk amidst all our different decisions, and then like find where we each fit in our collective, and then cooperate with each other accordingly, um, with further proper proximate expectations about each other's commitment, each other's um, support from and to the collective cause of being mixed heritage. Uh, and from these decisions and from these understandings and communication and interaction and relationship cooperation, that's where we cultivate, God willing, certain normalcy, standards, protocols, even regulations, laws. Oh. But that's what it is. That's what a community has, um, one way or another, uh, to help guide, again, the expectations, the accountability, uh, and the the security, the protection, the support within the community amidst temptations and challenges and threats and all these other type of stuff. Destitutions and restitutions and all these other kind of constitutions and otherwise. So, anyways, that's part of forwarding, progressing, advancing the conversation is addressing these topics. What was I just talking about? What topics am I saying? What I say before: ancestors, heritage, language, song stories, rituals, and ethics, rivers, languages, and calendars. That's the foundation of any community. For mixed heritage people, it's a matter of learning that, studying that, talking about that, taking next gradual steps within that. Being honest about that, as kinfolk said, comedians I mentioned before, brethren Michael and I want to say Ryan Alexander. I don't want to be messing that up. I don't mean any disrespect. But the kinfolk talking about, like, in the mixed heritage community, there are fake ones. There are kinfolk who are out to betray. There are kinfolk out to sell out. There are kinfolk out to throw kinfolk under the bus, to set people up, to gaslight, and otherwise. Cats are doing their grind. Mixed heritage is an increasingly lucrative thing. There's increasing incentive and motivation for outsiders to get access to a demographic, not just to sell things, but to sell out things, and otherwise. Because again, the nature of the game is different today. It's not about making money. It's about concentration and influence, and dissipation. So the nature of the grift is different, and what people are trying to get out of others, and what pretenses people utilize to get other people's attention, to get other people's trust, to get other people's buy-in, commitment. That's a big thing, getting people to commit. So it's a matter of being mindful of that and recognize that all mixed people ain't honest mixed people. All they're fake ones and real ones within every community. And as I mentioned before, that pertaining to the whole mixed and black folk situation, there's fake ones and real ones within each community. Fake ones and real ones within every ethnic, religious, and otherwise community. I mentioned before, one of the ways of better being able to tell the fake ones from the real ones from the fake ones, is being real ourselves, when that's our intention of finding realness within others. Being real ourselves in our day-to-day, in our day-to-day realness, being able to better see the same thing within others around us. If we're going to the gym, I can't necessarily be speaking about that too tough. It's been a while since I regularly went to the gym, but in those days, I still remember them. A quarter of a century ago, but I remember Monday, Wednesday, Friday going to the gym. When you go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you see who else is there. That speaks for itself. You see what they do. Do they just socialize or whatever, or they take care of business? You see that for yourself when you're doing it yourself. It applies to everything. If you're running AMs daily, you see who else is running AMs daily. It's not just a matter of seeing somebody who's claiming to do that and they seem fit. You see them doing it when you do it yourself. When you do prayers and meditation at the masjid, at the shul, at the church, you go to midnight or midday mass or whatever, you see who else is doing that. So that's part of it. That's part of the real ones. Now, when you also know, if you have that regularity, you also know there are fake ones that do that too. There's levels of it. There's degrees to the game. So that's further. One simple way, again, like telling kinfolk all from rip, like just meeting them from off rip, not knowing background, whatever else. See how they living. If they live in flash, flash, bling, bling, that's a big sign of unrealness. Plain and simple. That's what the ancients teach us. If they doing the big whip kind of spiel, that's unrealness. Now, it might be very intoxicating and charismatic or otherwise, and if cats get caught up in that, that's on cats themselves, because that's generally an unrealness within cats themselves. Facts. Am I being super impoverished by my appearance? Perhaps, maybe that's a factor into this. Am I being super exaggerating my no gives a fuck situation? Maybe. Trying to prove my point of who I am, what I do? So seeing how people live, and then see what people are willing to say about how they live, where they live. That says a lot right there. Oh, you don't trust us, but you want us to trust you. Okay, interesting that. That tells a lot right there. But again, that takes a lot of chutzpah to call people out on that. Because if one is going to question that, then one might be questioned back. So where do you live? Oh, well, I'm not the one trying to be a leader. Okay. So everything speaks for itself. Lifestyle, livelihood, how people are living. That says a lot about who they are. If people are talking about justice and like peace, then how are they feeding themselves? Where's their food coming from? Whose hands are providing that food? Are they slaves in the fields, migrant workers, indentured servants, sharecroppers? Are they factory workers, child workers, and otherwise? If they're going to be talking this game, where are they getting their sustenance from? Where are they getting their money from to pay for that sustenance, or however else they're getting it? Where's that coming from? They don't feel comfortable talking about that, being that transparent. Okay, that speaks for itself too. That's ways of telling real ones from fake ones. Beyond the game, beyond the knowledge, kinfolk got lots of knowledge. Cats can Google things now, earplugs, and have answers for everything. Cats are telepathic, can read mind. Cats have photographic memory and can read books. Cats can have all nice answers for many things. But the true wisdom and the true way is in the living, day to day. Ain't nobody perfect. I ain't perfect. But that's something I know by the grace of the Most High. So trying to find out who the real ones are. Those are some questions. Those are some answers for such distinguishment. How they're living, how one is living, and how honest one is about things. Whether one feels the necessity of having an answer for everything and pretending to know everything, or at least remember everything. We all know everything. To be honest, we all know everything already. We all do. But it's remembering. People are pretending to remember or feigning to remember everything, having an answer for everything. Or how many people have the honesty and the modesty to say, that's a nice question. I have to work on that, to think about that for a minute. Or I have a general idea, but there's a lot that I've yet to remember. There's a lot that I've forgotten. I have to read back up on, or study back up on, or ask somebody else about. Modesty is a significant revealer of realness, honesty, compassion, most definitely, but modesty too. If someone's claiming number one from the giddy up, caution. So, daylight hours, that tends to be also a beneficial realm for realness. Having these late night joints, sometimes it's a thing, but most often it's beneficial to say the conversation is for the light of day. There's an energy in the day that's conducive to that conversation, particularly when just meeting somebody. Daylight, so bright, out of sight. All right. Uptight, whatever the song is. Wonderland. Big up, peace and blessings. Steve Lynn Morris. So, chi chi cha, chi chi cha, chi cha, chi cha, chi cha, chi cha, cha cha, cha cha, cha chi. That's much of what we shared today. Oh, we got to 10 an hour, yeah? All right. Returning to His Majesty Haile Selassie I. That is one of the beneficial things that His Majesty Haile Selassie I and Her Majesty Wazirhamana provide is an example of living as a sovereign, an actual 100 facts sovereign of this world. Not just a sovereign though, but a sovereign with weight. And how does a sovereign get that kind of weight? Through trials and tribulation, through sufferation, which is comparatively unusual for someone of that staturation. When His Majesty and Her Majesty go through the invasion by the hands of the Italianos, kinfolk. When His Majesty and Her Majesty are snubbed and ignored and betrayed by the League of Nations, by the other sovereignties, sufferation, warfare, torture, and atrocities against one's people. Uncertainty, no guarantees of a happy ending after all of it, and having to keep a steady mind of how to navigate through the whole thing. All the betrayals, knowing like the people who were just fake 2 days ago, smiling, saying, oh, you know what we can do, then offering, well, you can stay here. You treacherous. Okay. Yo, it's like that. So have to do that. You got to make concessions and compromises, because it's not just about one's own self and one's ego. There are people dying right now. And there are people who are on the verge of dying even further tomorrow. If you stick with your ego and you say, nah, you lying bump, I know your game. I ain't taking nothing from you. Congratulations, Mr. Purity and Miss Purity. Meanwhile, one's subjects, one's constituency, one's dependents, one's loyalties are not just dying, suffering. But you're pure. That's the nasty game of this life and the nasty game of authority and sovereignty. Knowing when Gandhi talks about it being pocketing the insult. When to do that, when not to do that. Because in some ways, it might be the necessary thing for getting some strength and like getting some get back ready. And in other ways, it's just another step towards like that nasty process of volitional involvement within one's own deterioration and the deterioration of one's people. There's no guarantees. Because even when His Majesty and Her Majesty go to England for refuge, after England colludes with France and Italia about everything that was happening, and England officially, amongst the League of Nations, betrays, officially betrays Ethiopia to allow it happening. England is not some like angelic savior that provides Ethiopia and His Majesty and Majesty with refuge of saying, here, you can stay here. England exactly, officially, 100% betrayed Ethiopia to make that happen. So, but His Majesty has to be graceful. So there are things that we believe in beyond this world, strongly, ultimately, absolutely. And then there's our life of this world at this moment. And there's a dichotomy between those two. And we have to make decisions of how we compromise, how we stand strong and stubborn, resilient, gambaru. Recognizing, again, as I just said, our compromises can be foundation for returning. And I don't want to say tissue because that's further spiritual and that's not dependent upon others' provisions or whatever. But the compromises that we make in an earthly sense can be foundations for regrouping and re-strengthening ourselves in a genuine way. And it can be further slippery slope and proactively participating within that demise. So we have to be very careful about these decisions of compromise. What helps in making that decision is understanding the purpose. Whatever it is that we're accepting in terms of materiality or cooperation or whatever else, what's the purpose of this right here? What's the purpose of materiality? What are we intending to do with this? What are we intended to do with this? It's not just some ambiguous, you could, cash of money, yes. $1 billion. You could do so many different things with that. And in some ways, maybe sort of, but money is a tenacious thing, so most often, actually not. But whatever it is that we're accepting or thinking about accepting, what do we intend to do with this? What are we supposed to do with this? What is our purpose in this life to begin with? What is our purpose at this moment, where we are in our life, in our vocation? What is our purpose in this at this moment? So when we answer that, when we have a strong idea of what that is, amidst all the trials and tribulations help us to further concentrate on what our actual purpose is. And when we know that, when we have a solid idea of that, then we have further grounding about saying yay or nay to the compromises, to the offers. Because we're saying, okay, what is being offered here? What's the purpose of this? What is, before we get into like, why are they asking us, where does this come from? It's like, what can we do with this? What are we supposed to do with this? What are we giving up in receiving this? There's always something that's being given up. It's always an equal weight too. So we have to be mindful of the progenerativeness of whatever it is that we're accepting. Food, regeneration, okay. Clothing, supplies, shelter, okay. Land, that's something to think about there. Careful. But that's that in terms of on our side. Then it's a matter of like, okay, so who's this offering it? Where does it come from? What's their stated reason for sharing this? What do we think might be ulterior motives? How might this be perceived by others? How is this going to factor into our relations with others? That's all part of the give and take. So, but that helps us to make that decision about whether to say yes or no concerning the compromise, whether it's a job offer, a contract offer, a marriage offer, a mousy offer in the kitchen, being obstinate, saying, yo, quiet up over there, I'm trying to eat. whether it's 4 gigs turning into tres at this moment, all that. So mixed people on this wave, this new generation of, have a new name for it now, world returning. But at this age, and amidst this emergence and arrival and establishment of mixed heritage as a conventional construct, as a norm within world system, amidst the imperialism, for better and for worse, there are continual decisions to be made, continual compromises to weigh. Continual accountability. And further. So, you can't lose with a natural look. There's no going wrong with the natural look. One other thought about the big mixed black situation. This is like somewhat of a different topic. It's somewhat like going to like 100 on this side note very expediently. Yet it's there's benefit in sharing this. So at the risk of just like delving back into that whole thing that has already been, there's like already a settlement. There's already of course, there's already a resolution. To be honest, in many ways, between mixed kinfolk and black kinfolk. So this is at the risk of like muddying waters or of troubling waters, of clouding waters, of whatever, dirtying waters or polluting waters, disturbing waters. How about that? Disturbing circumstances when it's already kind of naturally getting to a point of like, we're going to find something that works. All that being said, truth is truth. And we share it with honesty, we share it with compassion, and we share it with modesty. And to recognize that we've been holding off for a long time. So some of it is just kind of like, it just keeps, once something's been open, I guess that's the thing with the mixed thing with the senses as well. Like once there's a crack in the dam or whatever, like there's things ready to like go through. So mixed folk in these past 20 years since that, being further vocal and adamant and further, like there's it's a further tide, and it's not just a tide, it's not just a wave, it's a sea, it's an ocean. So on the notion of black folk, mixed folk, again, the first, it's a matter of understanding that from our side, again, there are fake ones and real ones across the board. So, but from our side, where we come from, we love all our kinfolk. We love all our ancestors. We love all our peoples, and to understand that we don't have hate. We have to protect ourselves from the disrespect and the accostation, particularly when it's not just disrespect towards ourselves, but disrespect to our ancestors. We do have to stand for that. Our ancestors against that. So, but in doing that, some kinfolk may have lack of discipline. Some kinfolk may have lack of like ethics or whatever else, and may respond in further ignorant ways. So that's that. We have to account for that. But from our side, from our discipline side, it's continual love. So that even when we do stand up, we're not just clapping back and making hate statements and fake ultimatums or contrived whatever towards black folk. But we say, well, hold up, out of pocket. Yes, you're out of pocket coming at us like that. But we don't hate you. We don't hate us. You are us. And to understand, we have the same ancestors. We can't hate you without hating ourselves. For us to genuinely love ourselves, we have to love you. It's not our choice. But that's the facts. So, and I think a lot of people, again, and that's not just black, white, that's all different types of mixes. In these binaries of perceptions of betrayal and allegiances and everything else like that, just to recognize we love our ancestors. We honor and respect our ancestors as much as we can amidst all the things of history that try separating us and whatever else. So it's not a us then type of thing. You might see it that way. Some kinfolk might see it that way, but that's not. We understand something further than that. We could say understand something better, but it's not. We're not better than or worse than. The understanding and the rhetoric and the claims are further one way or another, but the people's is truth. So that's one of the challenges about being mixed is that when kinfolk disrespect us for being a certain race, we don't have a clapback for that just by saying something about their race. And I've seen mixed kinfolk just in the past week on some of these vlogs do that. That's not the answer. That's just further self-hatred. And mixed folk know that, but mixed folk play the role because that's what mixed folk got to do accordingly. Not excusing that, but that's just what it is. But again, some kinfolk joke us for being a certain race. We can't come back and just clown somebody else for being another race, because either we're just hating ourselves because we're part of that race too, or we're hating somebody else within our crew because they're part of that race. We don't have a comeback for that. We don't play the dozens like that with kinfolk about race and ethnicity and ancestors. We don't have that. So that's something to understand. It's not a us then. It's not a us them. That being said, cats set trip, and so there's a calling out on that. And again, in the mixed black thing, it's a matter of cat set tripping on bullshit because it's plantation politics, and kinfolk are doubling down on plantation master downpression politics. It's not even cats' own ground that kinfolk are kicking up dust on. They're kicking up dust on the plantation and expecting others to come back to the plantation to clap back. So all that being said, I'm trying to give some type of like explanation or pretext for this proclamation, and this is essentially an extension of some of the things I shared in previous joints, and it's just like an extended thing that I didn't say before, but that is continually occurring to me, so I'm just sharing it here so that there's further bandwidth to concentrate on other things. So it's all about venting, and that's all it is. That's all it is. The breath of life. That being said, here it is. Black and mixed. Black folk basically have two options at this moment. And we're talking about black folk in the United States particularly. Black folk have basically two options. To be African or be gone. That's it, plain and simple. Be African or be gone. And that's not a threat. That's love. And that's a wake-up call about what's going on. To be African or be gone. Because black is being phased out. That's not me. That's not mixed heritage. That's imperialism. That's the observance of imperialism. Black is being phased out. White essentially is being phased out through different mechanics, but coinciding mechanics. But you already see that. You already know that. You can quote Menace to Society. The hunt is on. You already know that. I'm not trying to feed into that whole hype trope, but you already know that. But seriously, you see that, and that's part of the reason why kinfolk are upset. and clapping at mixed heritage people and using mixed heritage kinfolk as a scapegoat, because mixed heritage kinfolk are part of the pawns and the puppets in that process of phasing out black. And you already know that. I don't even have to say what that is, because kinfolk already know, but I'll say some of what that is. It means, again, as I said before, and as you already know, for over 200 years, particularly over the past century, black labor has been diagnosed as significantly unnecessary, redundant, and the black problem less of a want in U.S. culture, but just summarily killing all black folk, that just alarms, and that gives the world not necessarily an excuse to come in and save you, but an excuse to invade and annihilate the United States. Because if the world actually cared about black folk, then the world would have been here before already. So we already know, again, the game of the world. But the U.S. can't just kill everybody open, because then the world says, oh, that's genocide. Let's go in and regime change. So it's been a slow motion situation from the migration of the Great Northern Migration from the plantations into the factories, diluting populations to abstain from having census majorities for electing representatives within the national legislature, but particularly within the state legislatures, whereby states might be able to secede from the Union itself and establish a black nation in Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, the Kakalakis, and otherwise after Reconstruction. So rather than having these black majority states that are full of slave or former slave populations, get a job over there. Yeah, be part of the city. Don't worry about you. We'll find a place to stay. We'll find a job for you. Just get off this plantation. Get off this land. You're too many. That's phase out. The labor is unnecessary. The presence is unwanted. It's a liability. Dilution. Get someplace else. Oh, there's a big West right there. We heard a place called California. That's where you want to be. Dilution. Phase out. Methodic. Long process. Then, I mean, we can just talk about the whole culture thing and appropriation and all the what they call that, covers, not just covers, but whatever it is. When black folk come up with something and then it gets imitated and co-opted, everything. So phase out. Then again, favoritism towards the lighter skin. That's part of the phase out. Dilution of African blood, phase out. Policies that favor mixed heritage people, phase out. Immigration incentives for new generations of Africans who didn't go through the Middle Passage to come to the United States, get schooling and education and grants and funding for businesses. And additionally, phase out. Here's the new face of Africans that the children can be taught about, who are not angry as much as the United States, who are increasingly appreciative of being here and have so much nice things to say about America. And look how dark they are and how African they are. They speak their language. Look at that. Don't listen to those other ones. They just, I don't know why they're so angry. Literally, white people talking about this, European ancestry in the United States talking about, why are Africans so nice and black Americans just so mad? Don't understand that. You already know it's bullshit, but it's part of the phase out process. And the solution to it is getting off the plantation. There's nothing else to expect from the plantation. Regardless of the crumbs that are fed from the plantation's exploits around the world, that's not the answer. Getting involved with the military and getting the benefits from that, that's not the answer. I speak from that with my family being in the military, and education being provided to my family from the military. That's not the answer. My family tells me this. phase out. So the process again is negation of a knowledge of self. Oh, have some gangster this, have some 40 this. Don't worry about your African culture. Don't worry about African language. No, 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 no. Do these other things. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The ignorant stuff. Yeah, no, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Phase out. Because in that, losing credibility, losing a sense of direction, losing the eyes on the prize, and instead just being reduced to a culture and a politics of complaining. And this is not sellout stuff. This is from a voice. This is from myself walking the streets. I'm not the most hood cred, whatever, whatever. But this is not. Don't dismiss this as just some suburban bullshit. Talk to Malcolm X. Talk with Marcus Garvey about dignity, about discipline, and about the pitfalls of drugs, alcohol, sex, ignorance. Go to the black sources of knowledge and credibility and listen to the teachings about discipline, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Nation of Islam. That's what we're talking about. Discipline. And when cats don't have the discipline, cats lose the credibility. And they get reduced to the politics of complaining for further handouts. Another what was it called? That joint a couple years ago. That check. Whatever it was called. Whatever check. Stimulus check. No, that's not the answer. But at the same time, anyways, like the people who get it already get it. It's not the masses. Most people don't get it. Most people won't get it in this life. Generally speaking, that's what history shares with us. That's what our ancestors, prophets, and sages teach us. So this is for those who have some semblance of this, who want to study, struggle, and be honest and striving further. But to recognize that black as a phenomenon is being phased out of not just American culture, but world. And so the solution for black folk, people who identify as black, rather than just doubling down on being black and black politics and gatekeeping and who is and who's down and who's not and this and the other, and waiting for the next check that comes from the box, plantation box politics, rather than doing that, to recognize the answer, you get two choices, to be black, two choices, to be African or to be gone. Because the black politics, the black box plantation politics, that's the path towards being gone. It's relying upon massa on the plantation and whatever massa say, and the divide and conquer tropes and boundaries that massa set, and to the point where it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and to the point of memories. That's the choice of being gone. And in that choice, you don't have to do too much different. Don't have to party all you want. Party and bullshit and party and bullshit. That's the selection of being gone. That's that. The other selection, the other option, the other choice, numero uno, is being African, being Al-Kabilan. What does that mean? It means remembering our ancestors, remembering our languages, remembering our customs, remembering our rituals, remembering our ethics, remembering our narratives, practicing our songs and stories and rituals and ethics, teaching these, cultivating our roots, strengthening our foundation and our steadiness amidst the storms. It's not just rhetoric, it's not just words. This is life, and that's the solution. And it's not easy because you already know how difficult it is to talk about Africa in a genuine way beyond coming to America and Waka, whatever it was called, Black Panther joint, I think it was. Don't even know what that is. Haven't seen the film, but I know that's what people talk about. Getting beyond that bullshit delusion and diversion to talking about the actual kings and queens and cultures of Africa. That's the solution, and that's the necessity. That's the decision to do that and to weather all the scrutiny and all the stigmatization and all the criticism and all the shade for doing that. Natural hair. Black women, African women, natural hair. No makeup. Oh, Rastafari. No makeup, natural. Witness Her Majesty Waizaraman. Natural hair, beautiful, majestic, dignified, noble, honest, confident, truth, peaceful, calm, regal, sovereign, natural. That says such a signal to our children, to kinfolk, just natural. And I'm just a dude on a screen, in front of a screen, at night, talking. So that's one thing. And I know it's for Sistren, it's extremely difficult because there's so much scrutiny. All the bullshit, passive aggressive. There has to be something opposite gaslighting, but just the bullshit shade lighting, gas shading. Of like, oh, that's an interesting hairdo. Where did you get that from? What inspired you to make that decision? Oh, we're gonna have to reevaluate our circumstances here because we weren't expecting it. Some people were. That's not us. I mean, we don't care, but it's our clients. Our clients are not always as understanding, and all that trope that we thought was over antiquated in the 80s and 90s, still alive and kicking today. We know that, and that's just one part of it. I mean, going to school, and we don't know how sensitive we know how significant women's beauty is, women's natural appearance is, the topic of it, the vulnerabilities, the strengths, the exploitations, and the nurturings, and how difficult it is to talk about it because it requires a safe space. It requires safety and comfort to be natural, to trust in being natural, to trust in being supported and valued, not even just by words, not even by money, but just by thoughts, by what people genuinely think without what even saying anything, what strangers think, but what one's own family thinks without saying anything. To be able to trust in that. Not just one day, not just 1 week to see how it goes. Life. Week after week, month after month. Hair shop after hair shop visit. It is a significant venture. And men don't know what is involved completely. So to say to a woman, be natural, and that's it. That's out of pocket on the part of men. We can be right in what we're saying, but it's ultimately, it's not a matter for us to say. It's a matter of us to support genuinely to the point of not having to say it. So I guess this is for the brethren here to work in establishing those conditions, those circumstances of comfort and security for women to be natural. That is a significant component on healing and being African. Okay, Balan. African Sistren in Africa, many have returning to do in terms of being natural. There's a lot of change in the brain around the world concerning Afrocentricity. There's a lot of healing to be done. But that's part of the process of making that decision. That's part of the process in making the decision of being African. And again, if you don't like the word African, we can use a different word to represent our native Al-Kabilan cultures, tribal cultures of the continent. Language, learning language. Again, what we emphasize is to learn the Amharic script, an indigenous African writing system from Ethiopia, Amharic. And in learning the Amharic script, continuing on to learn an indigenous language, most favorably the one that one is coming from, whether it's Twi, Igbo, Ashanti, um, Wolof, Swahili, uh, whatever it may be, whatever one most readily recognizes as one's ancestry from the continent, to start learning some of the language there, just a word, learn how to write it in Amharic, and right there, that is that is an oasis right there. To be honest, literally, it is an oasis. It's a cognitive oasis away from the imperialism, away from the plantation. It is liberation. Literally, it is liberation to learn one's language, to be able to think without using this imperialist language, to be able to think one's thoughts. It's a connection. It's an oasis. It's a liberation. It's an oasis, and it's a connection with ancestors. To say Akwaba, just that word right there, Akwaba. Obviously, there's further that's necessary in this life on this earth, but Akwaba, knowing Akwaba, saying Akwaba, it's energy. There is a vibration, Akwaba, that is established, that is shared, that is continued, past, present, and future, all points of the universe, concentrated where it's articulated and generated most frequently. Akwaba. It is a realm beyond standard imperialism that provides a ground for further learning, for further vibration. It's a connection with ancestors from the beginnings to the forwards by the grace of the Most High. An effective sanctuary away from the imperialism that doesn't know what that word is, that is comparatively neutralized in trying to manipulate and misguide whatever exists in the realm of that word. It's other than invincibility. It's other than an absolute utopia. But amidst the pervasive presumption of the plantation, of thinking there's nothing else, when saying a word such as Akwaba, there's liberation. So that's part of the solution, and that's part of that decision of being African. That's part of the strength and the courage of being African, and saying that amidst the consequences, because when we revert back to the imperialist language and the vibration of the imperialist language, the conditions and additionally are adjusted accordingly. They say, what was that word you were talking about just a minute ago? Where you get that word from? Who said you could say that word? Funny is how ridiculous that sounds, but at the same time, how plausible that sounds. And at the same time, even further, how archaic and old, like that sounds like someone would say in the plantation days 200 years ago, 300 years ago. But at the same time, it sounds like something someone would say today too. Ugh. Yeah. Now, what we might also say is probably further often and most likely would be like, that's an interesting word. It sounds fascinating. What kind of word is that? What language is that? How did you learn that? Wow, that's so fascinating. The things people learn these days. Oh, wow, fascinating. And you said that's from where again? Huh. So, if you don't mind me asking, like, why would you want to learn a language like? Why would you want like what inspired you to learn that type of word? And then why would you say that in front of other people? I don't know that. I don't know that language or anything. Why would you say that in front of me? Like, why would you? I mean, are you trying? I don't know. I don't know how comfortable I feel about that. I mean, like, I'm just speaking English. I mean, that's what I know. So, I mean, I'm not trying to impose anything on you. I didn't choose to speak English. It's what I learned. But so, and I hear you speak English. So, I don't want to like impose anything like where I come from on you. But why would you do that to me? Because that doesn't seem fair. And then you can say, well, where do you come from? Ah, okay. Here's a word you can share. Welkomen. Can you say that with me? Welkomen. There are different ways of saying it, but that's the basic. Does it sound recognizable? Can you guess what that means? Oh, okay. There are places where that comes from too. You can learn further. Truth and love, compassion, balance, reciprocity. Is that scary? Two geeks. Two gigs or not two geeks? Such is the quest of wow. Blanking again. Twice in one day. I'm trying to think about the first one I was blanking on first at the beginning of this joint. And now I'm thinking about the halfback that plays for Manchester United. Yeah. All right. That's a signal of the lateness of the hour at this point in time for Betty Bye. And also again another signal of the importance of practicing Salah on a regular basis. To help with the continuity and priorities within each day, and less susceptibility to these joints. So the midfielder's name Scholes, Paul Scholes, almost like Bond, Bale Bond. No. Now going back to the first one, indigenous of Palestine, Israel. It's actually a common word. It's a common term for people. A small minority population-wise, but at the same time for the credibility for having a continuity of indigeneity to the land through all the different shuffling of the past few centuries. It's not obviously not Druid. It's not Druze. It's not Bedouin. I want to say it starts with a D or a B. That might gonna have to be a wait. I might have to wait about it. And I'm still that instinct of saying I'll just go to the library here and check my books. The books are gone. Done gave away the books, so I can't just like check quickly. And maybe that's one reason for it too. Don't have the internet here. Ain't gonna search this and the other. It's a simple thing. It's going to be as it is. So again, mixed people, decisions to make too. Oh, so I mentioned for black folk it's a matter of a decision of one or two things. To be African or be gone. Black is being phased out, and you already know that. So the clenching onto being black is like clenching on to something that's being phased out, and the desperation and all the shots being fired and whatever at others is just like a desperation of holding on to something being phased out. And that's not hate, that's not shade. We're not willing that. You already know that. But holding on to the plantation thing ain't the solution. So now for mixed folk, there's only one option: to be mixed. That's it. One can apply. Well, you could also be gone. At that point, that's not being mixed. That's something else. So for mixed folk, it's only about being mixed. Perhaps for Africans, it's only about them being Africans or whatever else. Or maybe for the righteous, it's only about being righteous. But in terms of ethnicity, there's no other choice for mixed folk. So it's not a thing. Because then it's not mixed at that point. Mixed folk can opt out, but then like they're not mixed then. So we have the gatekeepers. So again, the emphasis in terms of that, and again applicable to each kind of bilateral, multilateral, interethnic diplomacy. It's a matter of identifying who the real ones are: black, white, brown, red, yellow, orange, and otherwise. Who the real ones are and who the fake ones are, and making decisions accordingly. To be honest about it, be honest within oneself, and then to posse up accordingly. The fake ones and the real ones. That's it. And the game is expensive. These joints are expensive. The rates are expensive. The weekend rates are expensive. It's like old school cellular phone. Actually, cellular phone weekend rates were less expensive. It's daytime. It's inverse old school cellular phone rates. Because, me being here at midnight in my ragamuffin outfit uniform in front of the window dealing with the elements, that's expensive. That's very, 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 very expensive. You can ask Sugar Ray. Big up to In Living Color too. And with that being said, all thanks and praise to the Most High. Blessed love and peace. And Rastafari.